This is what I did to get my Crohn symptoms under control when my drugs stopped working. And this has also worked for many other people. To get all the steps that I did to get better, check out my 13-day protocol on my bio link. So I took pills for about a year and it didn't really do anything. And then I did biologics for a year and they didn't really do anything. And then my doctor was like, all right, we're going to double the dosage. And when that happened, I got stuck with the bill, even though they told me they were going to cover it. And for a little bit, I considered going on a different drug, but when I started to understand the properties of these drugs and what they do to control your symptoms, it really didn't make sense that this other drug was going to work because at the end of the day, they were all stimulants. So what really got me better was something called GNM, or Germanic Healing Knowledge. It's also called German New Medicine in other places. And essentially what's happening is a conflict shock put our gut into overdrive. And during the conflict active phase, our body is developing extra gut cells to help us digest and absorb food. Not food, but like in the wild it's food, but for us it could be a girlfriend, a boyfriend, money, a job, a house. Like what is something you were trying to digest but you couldn't? What was some crap you wanted to get rid of but you couldn't? And usually if you have a lot of diarrhea, it's usually something you get really frustrated and angry about, and if you're more constipated, it's something that you want to hold on to but you can't. But when this conflict gets resolved, the body starts to remove these extra gut cells and it becomes this bloody, mucousy, painful mess. Now, most of the drugs that they use to treat Crohn's and colitis, one, are antibiotics. So these extra gut cells get removed with the help of bacteria and fungi. So there's less bacteria and fungi ripping away at your flesh. So that's how that improves symptoms. But with stimulants, what's happening, so when we resolve the conflict, we go into vagatonia, or we go into rest and digest mode, and that's when the bacteria and fungi we start to get rid of those extra gut cells. So taking a stimulant slows down, it slightly puts the brakes on that process, but also giving a stimulant just, it in its very nature, just it stimulates you. It makes you feel a little bit better. And then when all the gut cells are removed, you go into the epicrisis, and that's when you get the fevers and the chills, and then you come out of that, and that maybe could last about a day, and then you're slowly recovering from there. What gets somebody trapped in Crohn's and colitis is that the conflict keeps putting their gut in and out of overdrive, in and out of overdrive, in and out of overdrive. And not just the conflict, but also the PTSD triggers from the initial conflict shock over here. Another type of drugs that they use are antidepressants and mood regulators and stuff like that, and that can help somebody feel the sting less from that conflict, putting their gut in and out of overdrive. But really the only way to get better from things like Crohn's, colitis, and IBS is to fully come to peace, not with just the conflict, but the conflict shock. That conflict shock is what put the memory in your head where your brain decided to put your gut into overdrive. And so if we were to look at somebody's brain CT scan, this is the top of the brain, and then here's the brainstem. Somebody who had Crohn's, it'd be either here or here, and if somebody had colitis, it would be on this side, depending on what part of the colon is affected. It's always after a traumatic event. I've helped many people get better, when they tried every single drug and it wasn't doing anything for them. The only time drugs really work is when somebody takes them, they believe that it helps, like they truly believe that it helps, and they just happen to get the conflict under control just naturally. That's what's really going on behind the scenes. Now, I have a free webinar that goes over this in much more detail. If you have not watched this, if you're new here, this is everything that I wish somebody would have told me when I was first diagnosed. It would have saved me, it would have given me back my whole 20s. My whole 20s, I was trying all sorts of holistic stuff, trying all sorts of diets, going to this doctor's appointment and that doctor's appointment. Every time I asked them what the root cause is, they just laughed and they go, well, I'm not good. It's not my job to figure that. It's like absolutely ridiculous. It is your job to figure it out. You're a doctor. But And the sad thing is, the doctors of old knew it was caused by a traumatic event. That's the sad thing. Before the 1970s, this was common knowledge. I don't know why they flushed all this information down the toilet, and they're not using this information today. So, but if I had to do it all over again, this is my 13-day protocol, but my free webinar, instant webinar, is a mini version of that. So go check it out. It's on my bio link.